Hello, I'm Jan and I'm going to show you how to draw and paint wooden sailing boats today. I'm starting with a gaff rig cutter. Gaff rig means the sail has got 4 corners. Drawing boats is quite straightforward, providing you have a plan and take a few minutes to study what you're going to draw. I'm today going to show you how to draw and paint Falmouth Working Boat. It's a traditional oyster boat. The Falmouth Working Boats are gaff rig cutters and they're the last in Europe to commercially fish for oysters under sail. When fishing for oysters, the boats have a reduced rig. They probably only have 30% of their sail they would use for a regatta. The red sails originate from the days when the cotton or canvas sails needed preserving, and the tannin-rich dye would help do this. When boats are sailing, they can lean over, and the masts aren't always straight, sometimes they're slightly curved. The sail area can extend beyond the front of the boat on a bowsprit. These sails are very heavy, and where they're anchored there will be something metal to secure them. The first thing to draw is the hull. I'm painting this from a reference photograph which I took at a regatta. If I was going to sketch it and it was just going along really slow on the oyster beds, I would actually start from the top because it wouldn't have all these extra sails. It would probably have this one halfway up and just this one. So I would start from the top and work down, but as this is a photograph, I've started with the hull, because if you put the sails on, they're likely to grow and then you can't get the boat above the waterline. So I put in the topsail, which in this case is grey and white. They're all different colours. All the sails have reinforcing and battens in certain cases to stiffen them. So you have to look where they're catching the light. So some areas I've painted cream and others grey just to emphasise the shape of the sail. I'm just painting the reinforced corners on the edge of the sail. Where the anchoring point is, and the same on that one. So if you're not used to painting boats, if you're painting it for a friend or just because it's a new subject to you, always look for the detail if you're not sure. There's a nice little piece of rust. I like painting rust down the front. So I'm going to let that dry a moment and then I'll carry on. Now, this is a traditional wooden boat. Fiberglass boats are all different designs, but this is a wooden one, and it's got a ledge round here. Sort of got like an inner lining. So we put that in. And a mast, and then the other mast's white, so I'll leave that for now. I'm going to get a slightly bigger brush and put in the bigger sail. It's much paler colour. I'll just go in just to claim the space. Now, the next thing to put in is the helmsman. I mean, on this occasion's wearing quite a lot of waterproof gear. Another lovely British summer. And his crewmate is leaning over. Now the inside of the boat is wood, so I can do the middle bit. Now we move on to the sea. Now in this case it's a slight reflection of the boat because it's in the harbour. So I'm going to put that in very gently. And then there's a darker trail of water behind, which is just coming under the hull, and some shadow at the front. Could be a bit darker. Now if you're not used to painting sea, I do cover it next on this video, that it's not flat. It's like a wobbly jelly, everything's moving. So you need to go with your side of your brush from left to right and then back the other way, back again. Just keep doing it like that and you'll get the pattern of the water. And then you can always highlight it a bit, but you've got the main idea. And as you're going further away, they're probably getting a bit smaller. And then just get the side of the brush and join them all together. I'm using Payne's Grey and Viridian for the water. I've done the sails in Naples yellow, but you could use yellow ochre if that's what you've got. Now I'm going to get brush again and go in with a different colour. I'm going in with ultramarine. And I'm just going to lick the paint across, just gently. So you've got one sailing boat. This is a quick sketch of a Falmouth working boat that hasn't got a lot of wind that day. So the sails are not under tension, they're all got creases in and they're hanging flat and they're willing some wind to come along. So I'll just show you how that goes together. All the Falmouth working boats have lovely coloured topsails, which is good for seeing which one's coming if you're watching from the shore. Each one is quite different. Now these sails are just hanging in the wind. Well, there's not a lot of wind, so they're going straight down. And you can tell there's not much wind because the crew are standing up. If they were being given a tough ride, they'd be hanging on somewhere, huddled down. This boat is actually out to sea. It's not many days a year that my own little boat will go out this far to meet them, but it was very much becalmed. If they went up the coast to a regatta, it could be a 5 or 6 hour sail. So they're probably all very pleased to get ashore after this. And you can see that there's a bowsprit and there's a second pole, whisker pole. To try and get more sail, what they would do is put the sail out at right angles to just try and catch any wind, because these boats don't have engines. This one's got quite distinctive paintwork. There's about 6 people on it, so they would have had company for their long journey. As it's a wooden boat, you can see all the detail inside, which I'll put in shortly. See, oops, the front is vertical and the back is slightly raked, or the stern. Every design is slightly different, but still with the sails you've got the reinforcing in the corners and the anchoring points and stiffening. This shows beautifully on a very sunny day. You can see all the craftsmanship that's gone into making the sail. Even though the boat is out at sea and it's becalmed, there is, very unusually for the sea, reflections, but because the sea is all different facets, it's not one solid lump, that you do get broken lines. And there's some very rich colour of the hull. And lesser shadow from the sails. Then a line where the keel's gone through the water and the rudder, and then very dark from the reflection of the tiniest dark blue on the sail, which is amazing how that's dominant, but it is. And we're going to use a bigger brush, just give a better reflection here. Now it's becalmed, there's very little activity in the sky at all. So the sky really starts, the horizon's about here. It goes up, which I'm doing it up just to indicate that the horizon. It's actually in line with the bowsprit. Right, having got the line, I will now go, as you would do for a sky, horizontally. I wanted a sharp line there. And then the sea, slightly darker grey. I'm just going to mix up all the colours I've got to try and give a slightly darker grey, and I'm going to go from left to right and right to left, just to give the colours of the sea. I can fill in any little gaps around the helmsman and the crew. And then we have one becalmed yacht. Now I'm going to take a slightly different colour. I'm taking a different brush just because it will give me a bit of a variety. Making up more of a blue, and again from left to right and right to left. Just to show the broken facets of the sea. Now you can go over this several times if you want more highlights, but this will always give you the basics. So we've got one Falmouth Working Boat becalmed. Men are moving easily, the water's flat, the sails all look fairly flat. This one looks quite loose. Second pole to try and get some momentum, and I'll show you one that's got some wind. Right, this one's got some wind, and you can see that the boat's leaning over. This one's got quite a curve where it's being pulled with the wind going through it, causing pressure. This one's fully out. The bowsprit's slightly bent and the topsail is pointing backwards. Everything's under pressure from a lot of wind and the fact that the boat is manoeuvring in the water. It's being pulled over towards us. In the previous two sketches I've explained how to draw a Falmouth working boat, and I've now got some racing in a regatta. These have come about by my own photographs. I was in the right place at the right time. But you can see that the sails are all variations of a rectangle or a triangle. If it's a rectangle, you could sort of triangulate the top. And once you've worked out the principle, they really aren't too difficult to draw. When it's a regatta, you do seem to find there's an awful lot of crew. This drawing is on Arches paper, but I'm going to show you one on Langton paper, which is smoother. This is a more advanced drawing. I've up to now showed you two individual boats, or this is a group of boats racing. So their sails are overlapping and they look terribly close together. But the answer is to just take a little bit at a time, and if you're not sure, don't draw it too big, because the bigger you do it, the more you've got to reveal. I'm just going to give that a while to dry. They could always be highlighted, but this is paper that the paint sits on top. It's not like rag paper where it soaks in. I painted the sky with a number 8 brush. I'm going to try a number 4 for the rigging. I'm going to put the masts in first and then do the sails. There isn't really a rule to doing it one way or another, but there's an awful lot of sails here and it's just easy to put some masts in first. They're not all showing because one boat's covering another. Now, on this occasion, some boats have got plain wooden masts and others have got painted masts. You really need to, when you're doing your painting, is to look at the boats carefully. If you can find them moored up before they've gone out sailing and have a look when they're bare, as it were, you can learn a lot. So most of the masts are in now. There's a few more to go, but it just gives the picture some shape. There's several white sails that are together. So what I'm going to do is to put some shading on this one that says number 28 to take it back, so this one's more forward. To do this, I've made a homemade grey of French ultramarine, yellow ochre and Brazilian crimson. And what I'm going to do is just put it on and then use water to take it out. I'm not necessarily covering it 100%, but I'm just making it further back than this one and this one. I've got some interesting topsails on these boats, which are very useful if you're looking for them, because you can see which one's coming by the topsail. Because you obviously, if they're out at sea, can't read the name on the hull. And this one, all intents and purposes, looks black at the top, but I'm going to use a mix of Payne's grey and ultramarine. There's another sail that's semi-hidden, so I'm going to make that one recess slightly as well, but with a different colour, perhaps a little bit more blue. To make the sails that are further forward show up, I'm going to use a little bit of Naples yellow. Now all these sails have been through a sailmaker's sewing machine. They've got reinforcing, stitching, seams, anchoring points, so you've just got to look carefully and see what is showing on the sail that you're painting. When I painted the sky, I wet the whole area first and then let the paint flow over it. But when you're doing a sail, you want to try and do one colour in the middle and different colours around the edge to give it some degree of bowing, and then gently amalgamate it with extra water. The water does the work in watercolour. By putting Naples yellow at the bottom at the front and slightly homemade grey mix that we used for the other sail at the top, it just shows how it's tapering off, because there's an awful lot of height there. It's like looking up into the top of a tree. It's, you know, further away, not so distinct. Do exactly the same with this sail here, and then for the anchoring points, you just use a second coat of paint to emphasise that it's got shadows. Sometimes in old boats you see that they've been patched, which always looks interesting. But you need variety, and it's next to a grey one, so I want to bring it forward. It's rounded, the wind's coming from behind it. So what I'm doing is doing the brush strokes from side to side, which will hopefully emphasise that. I'm changing colours every few brush strokes. I'm not using the same colour. Just let it find its own way. It should look like a full sail in a minute. And just to help it, I'm going to, because I'm using a number 4 brush, I perhaps could have used a slightly bigger one, but you can come a cropper if you use a really big brush when you're doing tight triangles. You've got to get the shape right. So that looks fine. As you can see, there's all these sails that are adjacent, and we've got some variety. Now, this might look a bit flat there, but I'm going to put red in the gaps, and that will change the colour. But it's instantly changed the colour values here, that's not looking so dark. What I can do when it's dry is to go in more defined blue sky behind them to bring the white sails forward if I need to. The boat on the right, number 41, has got that in white on the sail, so what I've done is just put some masking fluid or latex there before I do anything else, and that will dry and hopefully show the number 41. I'm making up Brazilian crimson, Venetian red and a little bit of Payne's grey, just to make a very dark sail here. And so I'm going to get a bigger brush. I'm going from a number 4 to a number 8, and it's quite a dark colour. It's mostly crimson and Venetian red, and it's tinted with a bit of blue and grey. The brush needs a really good wash after you've used a dark colour, and you might also have to clean the pan. Now, to make the very dark colour for the sail, I used the yellow ochre, which has now got some red in. So what I'm going to do is just get a piece of tissue and just dab it in, just to get the red out, so that I don't spoil the next colour mix. I'm now moving on to the RedSail and putting another coat of paint on very carefully. These sails were traditionally dyed with tannin-rich dyes, which help preserve them, and they are a variety of colours. You'll get one that's almost crimson and another one that's almost sort of a rusty colour. And the topsail, the sail I'm painting at the moment, I haven't quite got it all in, but the boat is much closer than the other two, and it would make them look too small if I put it all in. So I've just removed the top of it from the drawing. I've just mixed some cadmium orange going over the old sail. It's very dark. Same principle, going sideways, having got a straight edge. And it probably needs some third highlights, but it's a question of making it look old and interesting. I'm using chrome yellow for the topsail. I've got to try and get it to go on nicely, because I don't want any shadows. I want it picking up the sun, glowing. So it's important after the RedSail that I've got a very clean brush. And before I do anything to that, I've got to let it dry. Then I can sharpen the edges if I need to. The bottom bits looks darker than the others. It's very tricky to get yellow on. I'll take some water and take this bit back a bit. I think that's fine. Whilst I'm waiting for paint to dry, I can have a go at this sail, which is an entirely different red. So I'm going to mix up crimson and Venetian red and chrome yellow. A bit more crimson, a bit more Venetian red, and some of this sail is obscured, so I'm starting at the top and working down. Now where it's opening out more, I can go sideways. It will need a second coat to show all the highlights, but it's catching the wind beautifully at the bottom. It's a really beautiful curve. I'm going to paint the RedSail, another coat of paint. It's a very intense colour. And make the cream and white sails nearby look much more vibrant. A smaller brush to go over the red on this top sail again. You want everything in harmony, so adjusting the shades as you go along is just part of the enjoyment of painting. Whilst the sails are drying, I'm going to proceed with the hulls. Now, they're nearly under the water on the edge, but it's not as bad as it looks because they've got an inside area, so there's a flat area of deck between the two. And the wave rolls along the edge of the boat. It's not a straight line. So there's one wave comes up, then goes down, and then another one. And the next boat is grey. I'm going to do this one next because it's fairly dominant, and then the one that's tucked in the back has got a lot of bare wood and a painted trim. But it's easy to see the inside area of this one because it's got a yellow surround. So any water that spills over will go there rather than inside. I'm going to try and convey some of the sea here. This is actually a harbour race, so it's not wildly out to sea. There's still lots of wash. I'm using the side of a size 8 brush just to convey some movement. And I have got homemade grey, which was French ultramarine, crimson and yellow ochre, and I'm tinting it with Viridian and Extra French ultramarine because the sea is always warmer than the sky and it's a slightly choppy day. There will be some reflections of the sails, so I'm not filling in everything. Don't have to fill in every last piece of the paper. If you give so much information, the viewer will get the rest. Now I'll let that dry and then I can put the reflections of the sails on. I'm just going to use a size 4 brush and just go in the gap here. And there, just to show that there are areas of activity beyond the hull. I'm just tinting this first sail. It's got very little colour, but the only white on the page is the white of the water reflecting and a few gaps in the sky, which I'm going to refine. So just make it a little bit darker here, and it shows how it's bellowing. Just let the water do the work. It's got a nice curve on it now. Now, with sails of that size, there's going to be some colour change on the water. Just a little. So what I'm going to do is just give a slight reflection of this sail, just petering it out, and the same, this is just Naples yellow on this sail here. Just a suggestion, if you think it's a bit bold, you can always go back with some water. And then the red sail and the yellow top sail will give a reflection. So in case I run out of room, I'm going to give a slight reflection of the yellow topsail and then go back with the red. It's just a hint. Remember that it goes behind the boat, the stern of the boat. It's all very dark at that point, and then with the wet brush just gently work it out so it's not too defined. And there's very dark water just by the hull of the boat because there's no light getting in there. Okay, it's going to be very dark and a little bit behind the boat where the water's been stirred up. Just get the brush and lift it a little, make it more undulating. Looks like a ripple of a wave. Now that has to be left well alone until it's dry. But what I can do is just get some green, which I'm using Viridian and French Ultramarine. And I'm just going to put some wave tops on with a big brush. You've got one chance at doing this, it's just sort of like a bit of a topping. Not too much. If you've got too much, you can always take it off with a tissue. Just a little bit of variety. And as I say, if you feel you've got too much, I'll just show you how to take it off as an example. Now, just a subtle hint of colour. Not much on the tissue, so you can see that most of it stayed there. Now when that's dry, I'm going to have a go at the crew. Some of them are on the helm, others are leaning over dealing with things, so you've just got to suggest it. The crew on the boat are very, very small in this picture, but they have to be in there. So unless they've got white t-shirts on, I tend to go along with a skin tone and do the whole figure. I'm leaving this one because I'm going to give them a white t-shirt. And then when that's dry, you can stick hair and clothes on and it gives you some idea of shape. I'll do the same with the next boat. It's quite difficult to get the suggestion of a figure doing a job. To give some indication. This one's a bit lost. I've added a sunset to this sketch. This picture started off as a harbour photograph. Once you've picked the bones of a photograph, you can add anything you want or remove anything you want. There's a finished watercolour with the white paper showing through as the highlights on the sea. Lots of crew. Different colours on the sails to indicate that they're going round a corner. It's blowing really hard, so this is pulled back probably a foot or more from this position. You can see it going back. To add the sunset, I've used cadmium orange, chrome yellow, Brazilian crimson, Venetian red, and French ultramarine, and just mix them across, warming up the picture.